Welcome everybody to today's session. Today's topic is going to be on sexting, and we're going to be looking at it from two perspectives: the law enforcement perspective and the therapeutic perspective. I would like to introduce Frank Griffiths, my brother, and somebody who has 14 years experience in law enforcement, including the Arizona 2006 School Resource Officer of the Year. Welcome, and thanks for doing this with me and sharing your thoughts and perspective on this really obviously concerning issue in today's world. And my hope is that there's a lot of different people going to watch this, including teenagers that are engaging in this, parents of teens, teachers, youth leaders, just anybody who works with youth or is a youth. I hope you'll gain something from this, because there's a lot of information and there's a lot of things to consider when discussing this topic. So let's jump right in. First, tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you're bringing to this.
Yeah, so I was a cop starting back in 2002, did a couple years in patrol, and then I got recruited into the School Resource Unit, which wasn't necessarily on my career path of choice, but it turned out to be a really great thing. I started working in the schools with teens for about 4 years, from 2004 to 2008, and that was right, of course, at the rise of Facebook and social media. It was still in the era of the flip phone, but there was still a lot of sexting that kind of happened at that time. Camera phones, video phones, and they're able to begin experimenting and exploring their sexuality with their digital media, and as you would expect teenagers to do. I often joked and said, man, it's a good thing we didn't have smartphones when I was a teenager. It would have been the same thing in our generation, So kids are often frustrated by the laws that we have and think that they're a little invasive or controlling. But what I hope teens would take away from this discussion maybe is that we've enacted these laws, the legislature in Arizona has enacted these laws to try to protect teens, because before these laws, in 2010, before these laws, the only law that we had that governed sexually explicit material minors was laws related to what we would call child pornography or the sexual exploitation of minors, and the only penalties attached or affixed to them were felonies, right? So it was basically geared towards adult predators exploiting children.
Okay. Really quick. So yeah, there's that, and obviously he's seen it from a law enforcement perspective. I see it in the counseling office, the emotional side and the damage that comes from predominantly the young woman, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But as we first talk about the legal aspects of sexting, and I know youth, if you're watching this, I know the schools try to put the fear of God in you about sexting and from a legal standpoint, and I don't know how much of it is propaganda or how much of it is real, but I really want to get to the bottom of that. So my first question is going to be in regards to just what are the laws in regards to sexting, and are they the same for young men as they are for young women? What is the penalty to getting caught sexting in today's world?
Okay, yeah, so first of all, the law does not discriminate male or female. It's the same across the board. Certainly anecdotally, as a school resource officer and then later as a sex crimes detective, as a cyber crimes detective investigating sex crimes against kids, I do see a distinction between the behavior patterns between boys and girls, but the law applies universally across the board. So in about 2010, the Arizona State Legislature realized that there was a gap in our ability to address the sexting epidemic as it was at that time, right? Because we're seeing a lot of teens being hurt and victimized through this sexting process. And so the law enforcement, there's an public outcry. Legislature made a law that basically, it's Title 8, which is juvenile law, section 309.
Is this specific to Arizona?
This is specific to Arizona. This is not a national standard. This is just in Arizona.
Do you know if these are fairly common across state lines?
I think it's trending towards becoming more universal, but there's still, definitely what's in Arizona may not be the same as in Texas, may not be the same as in Rhode Island or whatever, but here, this is the way that our legislature addressed it, and And basically they look at it from two different angles. One is the making or the transmitting or the sharing of sexually explicit material, minor to minor. So if I'm 14 and I have a nudie, a selfie, or even, somewhere I got it somewhere else, if I show it to somebody else, or if I transmit it and send it electronically to somebody else, that is a petty offense. Okay, and what's a petty offense? Well, so a petty offense is basically kind of like a traffic ticket. You get cited, and the only difference is a traffic ticket, you don't have to go to court, you can just pay it. A petty offense says you have to appear before a judge or a magistrate. So basically your first offense is you get a ticket and you got to go talk to a judge, and there's going to be some consequences, probably some fines, some counseling, some community service, something like that.
Okay.
Okay. The second half of the statute addresses the receiving or the possessing of sexually explicit material containing minors. And so, that's so we've got the sending and the receiving, basically, is how it breaks it down, and that is also a petty offense, if I remember correctly. In
addition to.
No, it would be the same.
Okay.
So if I send it, it's a petty offense. If I receive it, it's a petty offense. It's only a petty offense on the sending side if I share it with just one other person.
Okay.
If I show you, so this is it's kind of designed with this idea that there's a mutually consenting relationship between a boy and a girl or whoever, and they share sexually explicit material back and forth. Okay, petty offense. As soon as I take that image or video and I share it with more than one person, then it moves up to a class 3 misdemeanor.
Okay, this is huge, because the young men that I'm talking to in this counseling office will say they pretty much share it with a lot of people.
Right.
This is a badge of honor. This is their little black book. This is their opportunity to say, hey, look at me. I got all these girls' pictures. I'm cool because of it.
Right.
So common for young men to share that with all their friends.
That's right. So at that point you've moved from a petty offense, which is relatively benign. It's basically, don't do that. Here's some counseling. Here's a fine.
Okay.
Now you moved into, great, now you've got a misdemeanor criminal record, right? And down the road, if you do it again, it could be bumped up to a felony, and then you're a registered sex offender.
Okay, so
Right.
maybe to become a registered sex offender, you have to have 2 offenses?
A minimum, yeah.
In general?
Yeah, in general. And again, that's it's a case-by-case scenario.
Sure.
So, but yeah, that's generally the way it looks at is are you sending sexually explicit material, minor to minor, and are you receiving or storing sexually explicit material? Now, there's a defense to number 2. Well, the school resource officer or your parents, your teacher finds sexually explicit material on your phone and you're a minor, and it's, obviously it's another minor on there. I didn't ask for this. I didn't. So there's 2 parts that can kind of get you off the hook there. Number 1 is you didn't ask for it.
No.
Okay, so if it was sent to me unsolicited, that's not my fault, right?
Okay.
Number 2, and both of these are required, is I have to make a reasonable effort to delete it or to report it.
Okay.
So if I've reported it to a teacher, to a counselor, to law enforcement, to a parent, I've showed them, hey, I didn't ask for this and I got this on my phone, then you're not gonna get in trouble.
So that's huge. So young people watching this, if you get something that you didn't ask for and a friend just shows it to you to be cool, tell someone. Delete it and tell someone, or tell someone then delete it.
Yeah.
But make sure you let somebody know you did not ask for it.
Yeah. Now, in the case of like social aggression and bullying and stuff like sexting, there's a big crossover there, right? Because
Sure.
people will use the sexting images to then harass or intimidate or bully somebody else, kind of blackmail them, kind of
Right.
stuff. Historically and traditionally, we say preserve the evidence, right? Save it, take a screenshot, store it so that it can be used later. We don't necessarily want you to store or save or screenshot sexually explicit pictures of minors. Let the police do that. If you really want to use it as evidence, you really need to turn that device over to police so it can be forensically examined and then preserved in a forensically safe environment. We don't want you to save it to your device. So if you're a mom or a dad and your kids, you see sexually explicit content of a minor, don't save that as evidence on your phone, because now you're storing sexually explicit information. And that's, if you're an adult storing sexually explicit images of minors, that's a felony.
Sure.
So just as a parent, you might think you're doing something to be safe or to protect your kid. You're storing this as evidence. Don't do that. Call the police.
Excellent advice. So I appreciate all this information, and I hope, again, that's helpful for you guys watching this.